I'm Jim Check.
I'm Renee Merrifield.
And we're here with Beyond the Ballot. Wow.
Wow.
So much to talk about. And we'll start in our own playground here in British Columbia. Yeah. And you were part of that in the BC provincial government when Kevin Falcon basically handed John Rustad that football at the 1 yard line, and John threw it on the ground, I think, really.
Pretty much.
And didn't look at the wide scope of candidates. Instead of like building a combined team, they kind of stuck with their team, and that's kind of really come back to haunt him, right?
Yeah, his moment was in leadership was really at that 1 yard line, and his moment was to take everyone, all of the candidates that were BC United, all of the candidates that were BC Conservative, and take and pull them all together on a Zoom call and say, I can't have all of you, but I need all of you in order to win this election. And really ally himself with both sides, vet each candidate, and make sure that they were the absolute best candidate for the job. I mean, and then move forward with a new slate of candidates. He did not do that. Instead, he kept basically the BC, Conservative candidates, replaced a couple of them, sort of trickled a few in. I think it was less than 10. And in the end, he is suffering because of it. Now, we saw that convention in which their AGM was had, and there was this new, rallying cry of solidarity. But in the end, that failed. We saw 3 of their, that's almost 10%, 8%, 9% of their entire caucus basically leave caucus last week. One, because, finally John Rustad had enough of Brody's, videos, et cetera, tirades, and said, look, you either are one of us or you're not of us. And apparently she decided to not be one of them. And so basically, Rustad decided to have her leave caucus. Surprisingly, this was on almost the exact same scenario that John was asked to leave caucus, in which he was unwilling to just toe the line. And, it was on maybe something that's a little bit true or could be true, and then just like expounded from it. And, do plants live on CO2? Yes. And he basically said, then, climate change isn't real. If he had just stuck to, do plants live on CO2? Let's look at maybe asking some questions. Rather than that, he didn't. And he decided that, that was more important to him than being part of a team. So history is repeating itself. Now for 3 MLAs to leave, that signals to me that there is more trouble in that ship. And this is, if I was David Eby right now, I'd be pouring myself a glass of scotch and watching the show, basically.
He's got a few gifts from the Conservative.
Most definitely.
And the BC United Party. Dallas Brody is where this originated from, Dallas Brody. And then Jordan Keeley left, and then Tara Armstrong from Kelowna Lake Country here, so one that is in our kind of like our area. Yeah. Left, and the 3 of them said they will now sit as independents, later clarifying in a joint statement that they would explore the launch of a new political party. And the EB hearing that must think, oh my God, that is like the best news ever, because are the Conservatives ever splintered? Because even there's talk about the BC United kind of reviving itself, because they didn't actually kill that party, they just kind of put it in hiatus. So now you have the BC Conservatives, maybe the BC United, and then whatever this new party is going to be called.
Oh, I know. It's just a splintered faction. And instead of, John taking that helm and really leading the charge on a big tent party, it is very fractured. Now, Tara Armstrong, I take exception to her. She got all over X on this weekend and was touting the fact that she was elected by British Columbians, and that is who her mandate is from. And I was almost beside myself. I saw Pavneet Singh step down and step aside to say, I will support, Tara in her run. Tara was a parachute candidate from who knows where. I don't even know. She owns a house not in her own riding. She has since, becoming an MLA, moved lock, stock, and barrel, her and her husband, to Victoria. They do not come back on weekends. They are not at constituents events. I have not seen her at a single event since she became an MLA. She has not visited the significant aspects of our society, whether that's the Gurdwaras or whether that's, the different associations. She has been missing in action. She is not supported by British Columbians. And right now, I think that there was a call for her this morning in one of the letters to the editor on Kelowna Now, for her to step down and if she wants to run again as an independent, because I do not think that she would win as an independent in that riding. I think there were far better candidates with far more deep ties to our community that should have that position and be a better representative for Kelowna Lake Country Coldstream.
We do have a bit of a reaction from the mayor of Lake Country here. We're going to play this clip here.
Ireland here in Lake Country. Also, you head up the Regional District Board.
Well, I'm the vice chair of the Regional District Board at this point. I was chair in the summer. We've changed a little bit. So, but I'm also chair of the Okanagan Basin Water Board.
So I just wanted to bring up the subject of your MLA, Tara Armstrong. What was your reaction when you heard that she had left the Conservative Party?
Well, I was certainly quite surprised. I didn't find out till late Friday night what had happened. We're all still kind of waiting to see what the actual real things that led up to it were. We've heard part of the story, but I'd like to hear the rest of it. Like to actually know. But yeah, we were really surprised and a little bit frustrated in terms of, all these different parties doing what they're doing. This is all a distraction. We've got a lot of.
There you go, Blair Ireland, the mayor of Lake Country, sharing its frustrations about that. If you watch that clip, you can go on KelownaNow.com, you can watch that full interview, and that I think he shares some frustration there that people not having access to Tara Armstrong.
Yeah, and what I like about what he said is that it's a distraction, and it so is. It shows that you're putting your own politics over the what your constituents need. And that's another thing about Tara Armstrong. She shut down Norm Letnick's old office, and she has not reopened a new one. And there is nowhere that you can get a hold of her other than on the website, on the legislative website. So, definitely not good standing for an MLA, and especially a new MLA that really needs to earn that position in those stripes.
So the one that really breathes a sigh of relief, because they have a tight government, right, with these just like that one seat kind of thing. And now, David Eby can kind of breathe this sigh of relief, I think, because now it's going to be tough to bring this government down. I think I've even talked to some MLAs, and they're just basically saying, we're looking at an election, likely a full term. Right?
Oh, yeah. This basically cinched it, although it's going to be very hard for those three to ever vote on the side of the NDP on any issue, considering that they've been accusing John Rustad of being, NDP light or too liberal or too centrist. Now, the really interesting reaction that I saw from a lot of the political pundits was that this might actually be the opportunity that John needs in order to really cull out some of those more radical MLAs that could be damaging to the brand on a move forward basis. And this might be an opportunity for them to move closer into the center. If that were to happen, I think one of the best things for him to do is to start building bridges between some of that BC United leftover membership and MLAs, et cetera, and start looking at how does he move forward with a larger tent.
Ian Burns, our managing editor, I do a morning show, a news show with him, and we didn't talk on air about it, but he did talk after. He said, one of the things that Renee can feel vindicated, because he said this is exactly how this is going to play out, and it basically played out exactly when I think, like John Rustad must be looking back when Kevin Falcon, which was a surprise move too, right? When Falcon handed that ball off and to surprise guys like, Stephen from the West Kelowna and stuff like that, who, Stephen Johnson thought was, a strong candidate with BC United, and then they just all kind of got left in the lurch. And he would even say, like Ashley and
absolutely Ashley Ramsey.
So, so maybe it is, like you say, maybe it is a good opportunity for them to build a stronger base. Yeah. And it gives John, a longer time to kind of build a party of strength and unity in there.
And when you mentioned those three candidates, Ashley Ramsey, she's a fierce supporter of small business within our community. She's been on the Small Business Provincial Roundtable for almost 8 years. She also, founded her own animation studio with her husband, who is the animator, and she was largely the business aspect of that. So she was the one fighting the charge. But she, while, after they had even sold their business, she really helped me while I was the MLA and innovation and technology, go head to head with the finance minister and debate on the the last budget bill, and largely was the reason that that bill was reversed in this current budget, and that date was changed, and that we got our animation tax credit back. Now that hasn't hit the news because it's not super sexy. It's a date change in a budget. But what that did for our animation studios and our animation educators in the Valley is massive in restoration of that. And so you look at someone like that who's dedicating that was her volunteer time to really make sure that an industry within our Valley remained, to X her out and choose someone else is, beyond me. And then Stephen Johnson goes without saying in terms of his contribution as a city councillor and as a businessman in town.
And we haven't heard a lot from the West Kelowna MLA either.
Very quiet.
I can't remember his name now. Mike, isn't it?
Macklin.
Macklin. Because they're just not. I mean, we do get to hear from Gavin do a lot. I mean, he's willing to come on the show all the time. But I've sent out invites to Christine Malone and Macklin and Tara Armstrong, and I don't get a response. But Gavin, luckily he's willing, because I mean, it's great to get, these are the people that represent our area. It's great to get them on. It's you've always been accessible when you were sitting as well. So
yeah, as was Michael for Christina's seat, right? I mean, he came on your show several times, right?
And as did Letnick and and Ben Stewart and all that. They've always been accessible. I just wonder in all this, the Liberals are very selective in who they talk to in media. And, even, I guess I could say, and kudos to the NDP, during the election, I got an interview with David Eby, and I got an interview with Brenda Bailey and the forest minister and all that. I'm sure they'll be harder to get an interview with now because they don't need me. But,
exactly.
But, and then let's move on. This is the one that we've been waiting for. Mark Carney said in his acceptance speech at the Liberal Leadership Convention, or Liberal Leadership event, that he's going to axe the consumer tax, and David Eby now says he will remove the carbon tax as promised once that federal barrier comes down. He
has said that he will remove the consumer carbon tax.
Yeah. So they're going to rename it.
They're going to rename it.
They're going to really, and we're going to let's play this clip from Stephen Giroux, because that'll help explain it better.
Do you expect Carney to get rid of the consumer carbon tax before he calls an election?
Well, he said yesterday that he wanted to get rid of it. We're looking into how that could be done and how rapidly it can be done.
Do you expect this to happen, though, before the election is called?
As I said, we're looking into it. I don't have a time to give you. We're looking into different options. Do we need to change legislation? Can we go the regulatory route? What are the options? And I don't have an answer for you yet.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, he said that he wanted, for example, to work on the industrial carbon pricing system that gives us 3 times more emission reduction. So make sure that big polluters do their fair share when it comes to reducing emissions. And you should remember that our climate change plan doesn't rest on 1 or 2 measures. It's more than 100 measures that we've deployed.
I mean, there's so many questions after I watched that clip. Because this was the only thing that would work. Remember that?
Yeah.
Then it was the only thing, and Daniel Smith called for his resignation many times, and then how it, has been curtailing, suppressing Alberta energy. And then the other one that's surprising to me is, and I'm sure you got lots of questions as well, is if the industrial one is 3 times as effective, why were we doing the consumer one all this time?
Yeah, exactly. But it's because it's a moneymaker for government. If you look at the BC budget, and taking us back to BC, the BC budget has $3.5 billion from the carbon tax. So imagine if they reduce the consumer carbon tax and that lowers, and that $3.5 billion is what? Does it go to 2 billion? Does it go to 1 billion? Where are they going to replace that? It's going to, take our deficit from 10.9 billion or 11 billion, let's call it, to 13 billion, 13.5 billion, 14 billion. This is going to be replaced with another tax in another way. And if it goes on to the industrial or to large emitters, that simply gets a trickle down back to the consumer in our cost of goods. The BC chief economist, Ken Peacock, as well as ICBA's chief economist, Jock Finlayson, 2 economists who have been around BC for a very long time, came out with an expose on what the cost of our Clean BC plan was and what the cost of the carbon tax was. The cost of a carbon tax was 28% of the escalation and 28% of the decrease in our GDP. You could not have predicted what was going to happen better than what those two gentlemen did back almost a year and a half ago now, almost 2 years ago now. And literally this playbook is playing out. And if they just replace it with the large emitters, industrial carbon pricing, that's going to come back to bite us and still hurt the consumers in Canada.
My question is, if like we're losing industry here, BC, mining and forestry are our main components of our GDP. How are we going to spread it out? Who are we spreading it out to?
Who are our large emitters? Oh wait, our lumber and our mining industries.
So like, like our lumber industry is like basically in serious trouble. I mean, I've done some areas of you and I've talked about it so many times. So no, I'm just like wondering, because like if you look at Alberta Energy, it's the single biggest contributor to Canada's GDP, like close to $80 billion, and then BC's two biggest are I think combined are around $5 billion. Yeah. And we're losing forestry. I mean, Canfor said that BC is not investable at this point.
So if you put that $3.5 billion that they're going to get from the consumer carbon tax onto the large emitters, what's going to happen? Well, those billions of dollars of GDP, that's going to come directly out of it. They have nowhere else to pay for that, right? So those GDP numbers are then going to affect the budget in reduced amounts coming into the coffers of our taxation by way of corporate tax, right? Because you have to pay a corporate tax after you've paid all of these other measures. So this is a lose. The only way to actually affect our cost of living is to actually get rid of it altogether and axe it completely.
Yeah. To complicate this even further, though, to really complicate the threat of tariffs is really hurting industry right now. I mean, it's to the point where Doug Ford just backed off. I mean, he threatened the Americans with a 25% energy tax. That just broke, and that's off. He's likely going to try and claim victory on it. We're going to talk about David Eby's threats to the Americans as well. And then China's. We're going to talk about China here in a second too, because Canada's between a rock and a hard place. Industry in general, jobs are at risk, right? Because
100%.
If we punish them with a carbon tax instead of the consumer carbon tax, a lot of businesses are probably going to say, I'm going to go somewhere where I can invest my capital, easier regulation, less taxation, less regulation. Yeah. And again, that giant sucking sound that we've been talking about for a while and hearing it. Right?
Yeah, I hate to say it, but the words that came to mind as I was prepping for today were, we are in a full-blown trade war. I was hoping that it would be some shots across the bow, back and forth, but this is a full-blown trade war. What we are seeing is battle after battle after battle, measure, countermeasure, measure. There are only losers in war. Yeah. In war, 100%. It costs money, it costs time, it costs people, and that is exactly what this is costing. And right now, Trump, this is a quote actually from his book, The Art of Negotiation, or the art of the deal. That's what it is. Thank you. But in The Art of the Deal, he said, whoever has more to lose emotionally loses the deal. So whoever is more invested emotionally is going to lose. And I look at him, he is not caring at all what this is going to cost the American people. He doesn't care what it costs the stock market. He doesn't care if they go into recession. He doesn't care if the cost of living goes up. He literally does not care, because he thinks that somehow there's going to be this the tariffs are going to supplant taxation, and then lower taxes will lower the cost of living. There's a great video that Ronald Reagan did way back in the 1980s, and I should repost it on my Instagram account. But he basically says tariffs never work, and here's why. And he goes through and does a history lesson on why tariffs don't work, because they end up hurting the very people that you're trying to protect.
And I think that's a great insight. And I didn't think of that till now, but that emotional response, it's really what's coming from Canada right now. We're very, and myself included, we're very emotional as to what's going on. And then I think a lot of our leaders are reacting emotionally to, instead of measured, right? And every war, and this is, like you said, this is an actual trade war because this is volley for volley. This is not like a tariff thing where we put it on and we just accept it. And Mexico right now is definitely benefiting from this because she's sitting back quietly watching this thing escalate, volley for volley, and Mexico is just kind of like, woo. Yeah, we're not in that. And
pretty much.
She's been very quiet. And we got a clip here I'm going to play here from David Eby as he throws a volley back there.
How are you not tired of?
Well, we do have a clip. It's coming.
Very soon. Very soon.
Just like the rain, right?
Yeah.
Ready to go?
Sure. We're ready.
Great. Good morning. Good to see everybody. Thanks for joining us here at BC Liquor Store in Victoria, British Columbia. It was about a week ago. We announced taking liquor products and other products made in Republican states off of the shelf here at the liquor store and at all of our public liquor stores across the province. Since then, we have seen a threat of additional tariffs on the dairy industry, an investigation into our lumber industry by the president with the aim of adding even more tariffs, and disturbing articles in the New York Times and other places about the president threatening to redraw our borders and pursue Canadian water. Now, the reaction of many British Columbians, myself included, is if the president's so interested in Canadian water, then we're going to help him out by letting him keep his watery beer. I'm here to announce today that we are removing the rest of the American liquor products from the shelves of the BC liquor stores. That's wine, distilled products, and beer. And we're doing this for a couple of reasons. One is to respond to the escalating threat.
There you go. The longer clip, you can go on Kelowna.com and you can see it. And he gets into talking about charging tariffs to trucks heading to Alaska and that too. So,
yeah.
I mean, that thing could escalate.
Now, the alcohol is completely performative. That is bought and paid for already. It has zero impact on the U.S. Maybe future sales, future purchases. But again, it's going to be a little tiny drop in the bucket. That is not going to move Trump. And the whole aspect of charging to go up to Alaska, charging U.S. vehicles up to Alaska is ridiculous. And here's why. That highway, the Alaska highway, was actually paid for by the United States. The United States paid to have that highway delivered. And in exchange for paying for that highway, we promised to never charge a toll or a fee for driving on it. So the very
starting to sound like the Panama Canal.
Pretty much. So it's completely not possible and illegal for David Eby to do that. He could be taken to, a tribunal, court, international court of law, because that is absolutely part of our negotiated aspect of that highway. So these are performative measures. He is so weak and spineless in this aspect right now, and I know that's what's going to turn into the headline because you guys always choose the worst thing that I say for the entire thing, and then that's what becomes the headline. So I hope that you guys all know that I'm a warm and friendly person who just really wants to make good things happen for British Columbians, and that's the point. If our government, over the course of the last decade, over the course of the last 9 years and 7 years, had actually, BC or Canada, had actually done a great job of firing on all cylinders, getting us decoupled from the United States, getting us new trade partners, making sure that we are firing on all cylinders as the energy giant that we should be, we would not be in this situation at all. Trump would have more to lose than what we do. But right now, we are so emotionally invested in this trade war because we have so much to lose. We have one trade partner. We have our largest, and we have nothing else to fall back on. And we do not have an economy that is firing on all cylinders. We are in a very precarious, very dangerous place. And I will tell you, Trump, hearing his words this morning on the news brief on what he said could ease all of these tariffs is us becoming the 51st state. He has not wavered on that. And that is a little bit scary to me.
Yeah, one of the things that you've also said there in war, and I'll go to this point, that this is a trade war. In every war, doesn't matter what kind of war we throughout history, has ended in negotiation. And that's the only way that's happened. And we need to stop negotiating through the media and through just like fireball comments out there just that escalate stuff. They need to send a team down there that can actually negotiate. The only one that I've seen that's done a really good job is Daniel Smith, Scott Moe, and Doug Ford sometimes, but sometimes he gets a little bit too carried away.
This last one was full of bravado and really
we should be thinking about the best interests of Canada, not how we sound on social media, and not, you know what I mean, how we make a good sound bite. I think the best interests of Canada. I didn't know that. The one thing they shared, that the Americans paid for that highway.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. And the other thing that we have to do before we start to light America on fire for Canadians is NORAD. Yeah, which is basically the Americans, because like me and Ian covered this. NORAD, our contribution is 40-year-old CF-18s that are, you know, beyond their, you know, like
the Americans won't even fly with them because they can't navigate. They're not on the same radar system, so they can't actually communicate. They can't communicate with the newer planes.
Yeah, the Russians and the Chinese, they're just technology. It's far more superior than our CF-18s. But the Americans up there in protecting our north, and this is remember, the Americans up there have F-22 Raptors. They have a fleet of Raptors up there. They have a fleet of F-35s, which Trudeau said in 2015 he would not buy.
And then he did.
Yeah, and then in 2023 he committed to buying some F-35s. They have nuclear destroyers up there, nuclear warships, I should say, nuclear icebreakers, and nuclear submarines, which Canada has zero of any of those. So they do protect our northern border, the largest unprotected border in the world that borders Russia. So let's remember that we rest comfortably at night underneath the umbrella of the U.S. Protection. So, and I get that Donald Trump is like he's definitely caused a lot of grief for Canada and the United States, and I think this is the wrong way about doing things for Canadians. That it sits shoulder to shoulder with the Americans in so many different ways. Like I'm not sure why you're torturing us and causing so much grief.
Yeah, and I'm not arguing that, you know, for capitulation. I don't think that that's the answer either. But we need to negotiate, and we need to negotiate from strength. And right now we don't have any strength, and we don't have a plan for strength. And, you know, we started by talking about, you know, Carney's plan to, you know, take out the consumer tax, but he has no plan for our economy forward. I have not heard one part other than over the last, you know, to believe that suddenly pipelines are a part of his, you know, his global green plan. I have no idea what's going on there. So for me, it's a definite time of a lot of insecurity, and the best thing that we could do is get to a federal election, have someone at the table who can actually start negotiating, so that we get to a better place than what this war is creating.
We've interviewed a UBCO economist and several other economists have come out and said, you know, the best thing to do is not to react to the tariffs that Donald Trump says, because he's likely going to pull them off. Because the tariffs going to the U.S., like charging tariffs on our products, hurts American consumers. Let them do the screaming. The tariffs that we put on hurts our consumers right now. So us putting tariffs on actually hurts our consumers. So we have to be careful in what we do. The better reaction is to take a wait and see, let the tariffs play out for a bit, and see if the American consumer can scream loud enough that it causes Donald Trump to capitulate.
And I'll give you an example from the housing market. Right now, I just watched a housing expert down in the States, and he was talking about, you know, how the tariffs on Canadian lumber are going to injure Americans. And he showed the map, and I can actually send you the map so you can post it too. But he showed a map of where all the lumber stores are across Canada and the United States. And he said, this is why we need Canadian lumber, because it's the best lumber for us to actually build our houses with. And this lumber that we have on our eastern board is not really that great for housing, and it's not really that plentiful. And so we actually need Canadian lumber. So he was estimating that the tariffs that Trump is instituting is going to cost a new home about 20%. Yeah. Well, up here, the tariffs, and we've done, you know, our company, Troika, has done an analysis along with two different companies that all they do is look at the economics of building. And we're estimating that these tariffs may cost us 3 to 4% total. So you look at that, it's not hurting us, it's hurting them. What we need to do is be the beautiful woman who's just going to go and find a new boyfriend, who's going to go out there and start courting Europe, courting Asia, let's get our pipelines, let's get our energy, and let's get our lumber moving to other directions. And for, to countries who have already stated that they wanted it, whether it's Japan, whether it's Germany, or whether it's, it's other places in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, energy is our biggest export. We said this a million times. Energy, right?
Yeah.
And the minerals that kind of feed into energy that you need for energy. It is our greatest asset, and it's been suppressed. And I have a really good LinkedIn post that talks about hockey as an analogy,
Yeah.
and then thinking about putting, say you're playing the biggest game of your life, and these people all in their prime: Wayne Gretzky, Marilyn Lemieux, Larry Murphy, Raymond Bourque, Bobby Orr, all sitting on the bench.
Yeah.
Well, you put out minor leaguers, which, wind and solar and all that, which, in the future may become great players. But at this point, they're minor league players because they can't do base load. They're minor league players. On the bench is your best, and you haven't put them on the ice for 10 years, and you still won't open the damn gate.
Totally.
There you go.
No, and I just saw a comment come up about selling cleaner Canadian energy. National Bank, February 2024, actually did a phenomenal report, white paper that showed that if the BC LNG just got the four projects that were currently under environmental review, if they just got those 4 projects greenlit and started exporting, that the global emissions would come down by 2.4 billion tons. That is 3 times all of Canada's every single year. We would basically be like in a net, negative 3 times. So you're bang on about that. If we just got our and anything that you read about coal being the same as LNG is, you have to look at the asterisks, which will say not Canadian LNG. Canadian LNG is produced at 44% less emissions, and BC LNG is actually produced at the lowest amount of emissions, especially if we can get electrification going for all of that and stop wasting electrification on the rest of the aspects of our society. So definitely am pro energy, pro Canadian energy, and never mind. We haven't even talked about human rights. We haven't talked about slave labor. We haven't discussed any of those aspects. So if we actually added and quantified all of that in on a UN human rights aspect, we'd be way farther ahead.
And the sad thing is, Japan was here begging, along with Germany,
$1 trillion.
begging for our LNG, and Justin Trudeau said there is no business case for LNG. Now it sounds like they might build an LNG pipeline. Jean Chrétien said we need to build an LNG pipeline.
Yeah.
Remains to be seen. Those take a while, but they were begging for it.
They were.
And then now Trump is going to sell them the LNG, which is that was our deal.
Yeah.
That was absolutely our deal. One of our comments here, because we do want to kind of react to the comment. Dwayne says that the Edmonton Oilers won the Stanley Cup without Wayne Gretzky. Okay.
Yeah.
They won 4 with him, and then they really had the supporting cast that was left. Messier won a final cup. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think that if you take a look at the lineup of what we're saying, not the exact Wayne Gretzky comment, but just these are our stars.
Yeah.
LNG is our star. Oil and gas is our star. Uranium in Saskatchewan is our star.
No.
Potash is our star.
Uranium in BC.
Yeah.
BC has to change its legislation, but there is one of the largest natural veins of uranium in all of Canada that exists in BC. But because it's illegal to mine it, it's remained there. But there's actual technology that would allow us to mine it and restore it back into the ground once it's done. So the IPCC has, which is one of the largest global, carbon commenters and organizations, they have actually said that without nuclear, we will not be able to lower our emissions. So big proponent of especially small nuclear reactors.
Talk about nuclear. The Northwest Passage could become the most economic passage in the world, better than the Panama or the Suez Canal, if they open it up. And the only way to do that is with nuclear icebreakers and nuclear warships, and they can't park in a harbor in British Columbia. So
No.
we really have to change some of our things if we really want to look at the future and make Canada an economic juggernaut, they talk about, because that
could be a
that
giant.
northern passageway. You can go on there. So there's a bunch of videos on there talking about the economic benefit of that northern passageway. the Russians that recognize, even the Chinese say they have
Oh.
a border with the Arctic. I don't know where their border meets the Arctic, but they've said
I'm not
it.
sure either, but they do say it. Yeah, quite often.
Speaking of the Chinese, though, Canada stuck. This is our last topic for today. Canada's stuck between two elephants. The biggest economies in the world are no doubt the Chinese and the Americans, and you could argue one way or the other which one is the largest economy now. But Chinese just retaliated to our tariffs that we put on EVs and aluminum, and that was really trying to appease Joe Biden's administration.
Yeah.
When Joe Biden administration put on 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs to really protect the U.S. auto market, and then the aluminum market as well. And the Chinese retaliating right now and saying they're going to put 100% tariffs on our canola oil, our meal and peas, and that's scheduled to be taken right away. And the canola market took a huge hit.
Yeah.
They lost 10% of the value just overnight, just on that threat. So,
yeah.
But not a lot of talk from the liberals or the media on the Chinese tariffs at all, right? They just keep going on the Americans. This Chinese one is super hard on our, and it's going to target our aluminum as well.
Yeah.
It's not great news for the farmers. So we really need to figure this stuff out.
And fast.
Yeah.
And fast. And we need leadership. We need a government. We need vision. We need, and we need to. I mean, right now, this is all that we're consumed with. This is all that we're talking about. This is it really taking a toll on the Canadian public and all of the Canadian citizens. Really, we need a vision forward and something positive for us all to be working toward. And right now, with the leadership race and prorogue of government, we don't have that strong leadership that we desperately need right now.
Somebody said they got an audio problem here. Perhaps we'll just try this. Is that helping the audio? We'll see what happens. We got one last clip here to play too, because Doug Ford asked Danielle Smith to support his 25% tariffs. We got this last clip here to play from Danielle Smith on Alberta Energy.
This is what doing it live.
Yeah, this is Rommel is having a nap back there.
Response, even if it
No.
even if it holds back our response, even if it holds back one of our biggest pieces of leverage?
Bashi, there's no circumstance under which I would agree to another tax on Alberta that takes $40 billion out of Alberta. You can ask me as much as you like. The answer is no.
Okay, I'll leave it on that note. Thanks very much, Premier.
Thank you.
There you go. Danielle Smith reacting to Doug Ford asking her to put that tax on Alberta.
No. And you know what? I mean, honestly, Alberta has been treated like the plague. Other than, the equalization payments that Ontario and Quebec love to take from Alberta, largely they've been treated like the plague. The East-West pipeline has been denied. We still see the Premier of Quebec as well as the Parti Québécois leader saying, no, we're not doing pipelines. It doesn't matter what they do. So, they've been treated like the plague, and now they want help at the expense of Albertans. I mean, good on Danielle Smith for sticking up for Alberta. And this is on brand for her. It's on brand, it's on vision. She basically said, I am Alberta first. And basically it's been that way all the way along. She's been a strong negotiator against Trump. And that is really what you look at, when you're looking for a visionary leader and someone that can actually go up against a large power like Trump is. And Danielle Smith has been more successful than any of the other premiers at this point.
Yeah, we have to remember that one of the Liberal leadership candidates had a tweet out there that says we have to figure out a way to landlock Alberta's energy. And you wonder why she's a little jaded.
Yeah.
And then Stephen Guilbeault has basically attacked Alberta Energy.
Yeah, and basically said we can't have any additional fossil fuels.
Yeah. And then, again, the people commenting said Alberta never sent any money to Ontario and Quebec.
Alberta absolutely has. Google equalization
Maybe he's a
payments.
comedian.
Yeah. Google equalization payments. It's very clearly laid out.
I've got a good map on my LinkedIn, too.
Okay, there you go. But yeah, but you know what? Interestingly, I was on a board in Quebec for many, many years, 12 years. And so I would travel out there frequently for these board meetings. And my Quebecois friends often didn't understand how they were receiving these equalization payments, because it's not like a check in the mail for them, right? It goes through the Canadian government and back down to them through all the government subsidies. So what they think is coming from the federal government is actually, they don't understand that the federal government can actually take that money from you if you have a surplus in your budget every month or every year. And that's largely what, Alberta has been doing. It was basically to take money from the western provinces and push it over to the eastern. And I mean, if you look at Quebec, they are one of the largest takers on the equalization payments. And I think largely because they don't understand what's happening.
Yeah, and the premier of Quebec, or the leader of the Bloc, I think, came out and said that they have no interest in a pipeline that is no benefit to Quebec. So might be a benefit to the rest of Canada, though.
Oh, and I would say it's definitely a benefit to Quebec. We can talk about the tankers that are arriving into the Saint Laurent on a daily, if not weekly basis, and we can tell them that, what if we could remove all those tankers for you?
Renee's been very generous with the time. This is about an hour now. We shoot for half an hour, but there's so much to talk about, and we're very appreciative of Renee's time. And any closing thoughts?
No, just the election cannot come soon enough. So I hope that we can see a light at the end of the tunnel. If it feels like we're in a battle right now, it's because we are.
Yeah, and I think like Renee said, every war ends in a negotiation. So hopefully we can have calmer heads and people can sit down and actually talk about this, and maybe less in the media might help, right? Because I think
less
this
on
is
X.
less somewhere, right? So, and actually have some calmer heads there, right? Because Canada is also looking for a chair. This is that we'll end on a high note. Reuters reported that Justin Trudeau left the House with his chair.
Yeah, as any MP is allowed to.
Yeah,
any MP can actually take their chair.
Do they
with them.
stick their tongue out when they leave with the chair?
No, that was weird. That was just weird.
Anyway,
Awesome.
there
Have
you
a
go.
great day.
Yeah, we thank you for watching Kelowna Now.